Today I created 2 more eyeshadow looks using the new Natasha Denona Bloom palette, and for both of these looks I only used 3 brushes. I will link my 2 other videos with this palette down below in case you want some more inspiration of some more looks you can create with this palette, but let's go ahead and get started. I'm so excited to create 2 more eye looks with this eyeshadow palette today, but just to let you know, there's going to be no face makeup in this video. This video is strictly close-up eyeshadow tutorials, and the reason is because I got a chemical peel about 5 days ago now, so my skin is still healing from that and it's peeling, and it just would not make sense to try to put on a full face of makeup, but I can still do my eye makeup for you guys. Let's get started on the first look. I already primed my eyes, and for that I used the Rare Beauty eyeshadow primer, and I always set it with a translucent powder. I always like to show you guys some kind of everyday easy eye look with the palette, so that's what I want to do for the first look. I'm going to start with the shade Robin on a fluffy crease brush. So I have that shade on the tip of my brush like that, and I'm going to run this throughout my entire crease. I'm using a pretty light hand, and I'm just doing a back and forth motion all the way from this inner crease all the way to the outer crease. All the brushes I'm using today are by Sigma Beauty. They make my favorite eyeshadow brushes, and I do have a code with them. It's just Angela Bright to save you some money on their website. I really like how soft this shade is, and it's blending out really nicely on its own. On the same brush, I'm going to pick up Petal, but you guys know I like a really smooth blend in my crease, so I always like to use a lighter shade like this to blend around the edges of my transition shade, so I'm kind of blending just right below my brow. Now I'm going to switch to a crease brush in the shade Keen. So I picked up this shade more on the flat side of this brush, and I'm just going to lightly dust that across my entire eyelid to add a little bit of color. And this shade is kind of similar to Robin, but it is just maybe a tad bit lighter, and it has a bit more peach in it, where Robin has a little bit more of a salmony-ness to it. But I just want to have a soft wash of color on my lid, and then I am blending that up into the crease area, so it's going to blend nicely into Robin. And while I'm here, I'm going to take more Keen on the tip of this brush and run that across my entire lower lash line. And then I'm grabbing more of that lighter matte shade Petal on the same brush, and just also running that across my entire lower lash line to kind of smooth things over. Now I want to add some depth to the outer part of my eye, so I'm going to switch to a small firm crease brush in the shade Bark. So I have that shade on the tip of my brush, and I'm going to look directly into my mirror and place my brush down on this very outer part of my lid. I'm doing a very soft little pressing motion just to get this color down. And then once I have less product on my brush, I can start to move that brush around and kind of soften out that brown. And then I'm going to take whatever's left over on my brush on the outer part of my lower lash line. And then this outer part of the lower lash line is going to connect to that brown that's on the outer part of the lid. Now I'm going to go back to my crease brush. I have no additional product on this, and I'm just going to use that to softly blend around Bark. Kind of right here on the outer crease area, and then also a little bit along the lower lash line. And then you can kind of intensify that Bark shade as much as you want to. I'm going to keep mine nice and low and just like close to my lash line because I like the kind of lifted effect that it gives. Now I want to pop a shimmer on the center of my lid, so before I do that, I'm going to apply a little bit of my NYX glitter primer. So for this, you only need a tiny amount, and I'm going to pop that right on the center of my eyelid. And this primer is really going to make just any shimmer shade pop so much more, and is going to make it last longer on your eye as well. And for my shimmer, I'm going to take Crisp on my finger. That is what it looks like. And right on the center of the lid. Okay, I love how that just brightened up the center of my eyelid. And it's definitely a pretty soft shimmer from Natasha. It's not one of those like super glittery, sparkly effect shadows, but I think a lot of people would like this shadow for every day. And I think layering it under that peachy shade Keen was nice because it gave this shadow just more of a peachy base overall. I went ahead and popped on my mascara and lashes, and for my lashes, I'm wearing the Bright Lashes Half Lash in Whisper. The Bright Lashes is My Small Business, and this style Whisper is the most natural looking half lash that I carry. What's nice about this lash is that it's actually a lot shorter than your typical lash, so it's not going to overpower your eyes and just looks a lot more natural on the eyes. I'm going to finish this look by showing you this final step that I've been doing a lot to finish up my eye look. So I've kind of stopped using black liner altogether, especially for a softer everyday look like this. I'm just more into brown liner these days, and especially with a look like this that does lean more on the warm side, a brown liner is what I want. So this is Makeup Forever Limitless Brown, and I'm just going to run this liner across my entire tight line area and kind of underneath my natural lashes. And I'm going to bring that liner all the way into my inner corner as well. I just love the subtle difference that this makes to my lash line. Now, since I placed that liner in this tight line area, throughout the day it will transfer to my waterline, but it'll just be like a little soft, smudgy amount of brown, and I really don't hate how that looks at all. Here's a final close-up of the first look. I actually really love how this look turned out. I really like the soft peachiness of it. Now let's move on to the second look. I'm gonna start by taking the dirty brushes that I just used and clean them off on my Sigma switch to get all the pigment off of them so I can use them for a second look. Okay, so they're not perfectly clean, but all of that eyeshadow pigment is off of them and nothing is gonna come off now. I'm gonna start with the shade Flows on my crease brush, and I'm gonna run this shade throughout my entire crease, but I'm keeping my brush pretty low in my crease at first just because this is kind of a darker shade and I don't wanna overdo it at first and like have it all over the place. I am okay if some of the shadow kind of ends up on my lid. So then once most of that product is off my brush, I'm going to bring my brush a little bit higher in my crease now and really start to blend out this shade. I kind of fell in love with this shadow in my very first video I did with this palette because I love the slightly mauvey undertone that this has and a little bit of rosiness as well. I'm actually really happy with how this shade is blending out so far. It looks nice and smooth. And then same brush, I'm picking up Petal. And same thing as the first look, I'm using this shade to soften out the edges of my crease shade. Petal really is just like the perfect blending shade in this palette. Now I picked up a little bit more Flows and I'm going to use that to intensify my crease even more. I know for sure I do want to make this look a bit deeper than the first one. I'm just using Flows to deepen up this outer crease area. I'm not going to bring it all the way into my inner crease. I'm going to keep it concentrated out here. Now I want to work on the lower lash line a bit, but this time I'm switching to a smaller brush. I'm going to go back to that small firm crease brush with more Flows, and I'm running that across my entire lower lash line. And I switched to this brush for the lower lash line because that E35 brush would be way too fluffy and would kind of make a big mess. And then again, when I work on my lower lash line, I kind of like to drag the eyeshadow outwards and I'm following the angle of my lower lash line, and that helps me to connect the shadow to my upper lid out here. This line right here looks a little harsh to me, so I'm going to go back to that light shade Petal on my crease brush, and I'm just running that right along this shadow. Now I want to go in with some shimmers on my eyelid, so again, I'm going to go in with my NYX Glitter Primer. Just a tiny bit of that, and I'm going to place this on my inner lid and kind of go all the way to the center of my eyelid. And you can totally see how tacky this primer makes my lid. For this look, I want to use two shimmers. I want to use Rue and Fleur, so I'm going to start with Fleur on my finger. That's what that looks like, and I want this one on the inner part of my lid. Ooh, okay, that looks so good with the glitter primer. When I was doing swatches of this palette, I was kind of unimpressed with this shade, but like that is a gorgeous shimmer. And again, it's kind of more of like your just typical basic shimmer formula. It's not one of those super sparkly shadows. So I do think a lot of people would really like this shade. I'm kind of going about halfway in with this shade on my eyelid, and then I'm going to pick up Rue. And this is a really pretty pink, and this is going to go more on the outer 3/4 part of my lid. So I'm kind of using this shade to blend this lighter shade Fleur into Flows. Taking a little bit more Fleur, just kind of touching this up. You can kind of go back and forth between the two shimmers until you're happy with how the blend looks. Like, you could definitely add more Rue if you want this look to be more pink, but I want to add more Fleur because I really like the brightness of that shadow. This is looking so good so far, but I do want to make it just a little bit smokier. So on that same small firm blending brush, I'm picking up Clover, and I'm going to use that to deepen up my entire lower lash line. And a little bit on the very outer part of my lid. I went ahead and popped on my mascara and lashes, and I kept it easy for you guys. I'm wearing the same exact lash. Again, it's just Whisper from the Bright Lashes. And then I did also apply that same brown liner in my tight line, but I also added it to my waterline for this look as well for a little bit more smokiness. And here's a final close-up of the second look. And then here are both looks side by side. I think these both turned out so gorgeous. So this is now my third and fourth look with this palette, and I gotta say, the more that I'm actually using this palette, the more that I'm enjoying the color story. I've been saying for a while that I'm not into super warm shadows, but I think the warm shadows in this palette are done so beautifully, where they lean more peachy pink and not like orangey peach, you know what I mean? I just think the shades are a lot more flattering on the eyes than you might expect. I had so much fun creating two more eye looks with this Bloom palette. If you do want to check out this palette, don't forget I do have a code that works on Natasha Denona's website. It's just Angela Bright, and that'll save you some money. As always, I'll list and link all the products and brushes I used today down below, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.